Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Silver Years. My name is DK, and I'm very happy to be here. And I humbly thank you for joining me today. As a reminder, and I like to say this at the beginning of everything, the stories and anecdotes I share with you on this channel are here for your entertainment and consideration. Please take from them what helps you, what resonates with you, and discard the rest. If there's something I share that can support your personal growth and spiritual expansion, your sense of self and personal value, then it's all good. So in this video, I'd like to continue on with the theme of generational inheritance as initiated in my previous video titled Family Trees Have Deep Roots, by using an example from my own life tied to a generational pattern in my family. Now, this example will involve a fragment of the wound we call abandonment. And I suspect most of us have a pretty good sense of what being abandoned feels like and how disruptive that feeling can be. It can leave us feeling betrayed and it can also create substantial trust issues within, especially when we don't expect to be abandoned or when we don't see it coming. Or, and this is a big one, the issue can become a patterned part of our reality when we've been generationally synchronized to anticipate being abandoned. Basically, when we're programmed to expect it. Either way, the feeling of being deserted in a time of need can leave a lasting wound that will likely influence how we navigate going forward, especially after an abandonment experience. And the need to self protect often becomes paramount because there's a part of us that no longer feels safe, which makes sense, right? I personally would consider the feeling of abandonment an internal trauma event because the feeling of it severely disrupts the foundation of our emotional base, our emotional security. And repeating what I mentioned in my previous video, emotions are frequencies, and frequencies create our reality. When there's a hiccup in our emotional body, it ripples into everything we are without us knowing it a lot of the time. Even after we think we've moved on from it, like we're over it, the glitch is often still there, lurking quietly in the background until the next time we're triggered by what we perceive to be an abandonment situation. Have you ever had that happen to you? I sure have. Now, I've come to know that these scenarios will rinse and repeat throughout my life in a variety of ways until the moment I decide to get to the bottom of it, until I decide the cycle needs to end. At least, this is how it's worked for me. And maybe it'll work this way with you as well. Once I become consciously aware that I'm dealing with a repetitive cycle or pattern that I don't particularly care for, then I have a choice. I can choose to heal the wound in order to neutralize the frequency of it so that it ends with me right now. Or I can choose to live with it, to play with it, and let it ride into the next generations until some future descendant shows up with the capacity to end the pattern and reset the bloodline. Yes, I know. It's a tall order. But these choices are there for all of us, whether we like the choices or not. We always have a choice. And remember, your experience boils down to personal perspective, too. What would traumatize one person may have little to no impact on another. So, this isn't a one size fits all kind of thing, especially when considering that our personal perspectives are influenced by not only our daily life experiences, but are built upon and compounded by the unique genetic frequencies we are born with. Now, some of the abandonment threads that ran through my mother's family line came to the forefront for me to review one day about 25 years ago through a comment she made to me. And mind you, my mother thought she was helping me. And to be honest, this has happened a lot with my mother throughout my life. She would not have discussions. She would simply make comments, like dropping a trigger bomb and then move on. Um, and my mother, and let's just be fair here, we're going to outline some of the background of what she came with. My mother was a product of this, what they call the silent generation. I'm a baby boomer. They clump us all into generations. So my mother came from the silent generation, and it was a generation. And this is my perception. If you look it up, it's not how it's defined when you look it up online. But for me, my interpretation is this silent generation was a generation that was so shamed and suppressed by societal judgments and expectations about everything that they suffered in silence out of sheer self protection. In other words, many of their secrets died with them because they never felt safe enough to talk about the unsavory hidden things, which in turn offered little to no opportunity for healing anything. It merely perpetuated the family patterns by shoving them under the rug. I remember once leaving the movie theater with my mother when the movie Far From Heaven came out with Julianne Moore and Dennis Quaid. I think it was in the early 2000s. The heaviness in her was palatable. When I asked her what she thought of the movie, her shoulders sagged and she barely exhaled an answer like she couldn't breathe. She said, "It was just like that. It was just like that. It was horrible." And that's how she felt. Um, so anyhow, back to 25 years ago, one day, as I was leaving her house on the hill, she came over to my car window to offer me some advice before I drove away. I was feeling exceptionally down that day, and it had to do with what I felt at the time was my inability to find a good love interest or a partner in my life, and the loneliness that is ensued as a result. And while this was a topic I would have never felt comfortable sharing with her, because in so many ways I did not consider my mother a safe place to land. I briefly mentioned something about it to her during my visit. I must have. And her way of trying to help me accept my fate was to tell me that day at my car window that I needed to just get used to it. That the women before me, herself included, all ended up alone, and that I needed to just accept the fact that I will probably be alone the rest of my life. Whoa. Talk about a gut punch I never saw coming. It took the wind right out of me, really. And I was in my early 40s at the time. I was young and I was vibrant, smart, kind of cute, and I had a lot to offer a good partner, or so I thought. And here was my mother telling me to just give it up and accept my generational fate. I truly felt like she cursed me with her words, that I was being cursed by my own mother and her predecessors and condemned to live a solitary life I apparently had little control over. It became obvious to me later that my mother really thought she was helping me to find acceptance in what she felt could not be changed, because this fate had been her own experience, and as it had for the women who came before her. And it would therefore be my fate as well as the firstborn daughter. Now, the power of her words overshadowed that part of my life for a very long time afterward. And it only stopped when I began to overstand the influence of my generational inheritance and the need to change it. not accept it. And for me, the change happened when I learned to look for the love I was missing within the essence of my being and not outside of me. Yes, I know it sounds cliche, but it didn't feel cliche doing the internal work to get here. And years later, as my perspective expanded, I began to ponder on the possibility that maybe she really did help me with her advice in the long run. Like she tossed me the ball for the goal because she couldn't be the one to run a new pattern. The ball was now in my court for the shift, and I was to be the one to support our generations moving forward with a new frequency if I chose to change it. And I did choose to change it. So, why did my mother see her fate in this scenario like she did? Well, it was a mercurial and rocky history when it came to the matter of husbands and male partners in the lives of my female predecessors. Where I have the most information about my mother's lineage in this regard is related to my great grandmother and her two sisters, my grandmother and her sister, and my mother, who was an only child. I'm not sure what happened before my great grandmother was born to create the first hiccup, the first ripple in the lineage as a cause for this rocky history with the men who married into the family, since there's usually some sort of trauma event as a start point. And from what I can see, there wasn't one woman in the line who didn't suffer some form of abuse from a man they brought into the family. It just perpetuated for generations and somehow got normalized. I think it's important to note also the social mood of the day circa turn of the century, early 1900s. To put it into context now, women were considered chattel overall and the property of their husbands. Survival for women, which really meant financial survival, was dependent upon the men in their lives, predominantly their husbands, who had power over them and the bank accounts. As a side note, and this might be a real hard one for the younger generations to understand, but as a side note, I'd like to add that much of this legal financial oppression of women did not begin to change until the late 1970s. I lived it. Until then, a woman couldn't even have a credit card or a car loan or a home loan or in some cases a bank account in her own name without a husband on the account. So to be without a husband was in many ways to be vulnerable and unprotected. This is the frequency I received as part of my generational inheritance, as did my mother. Here's what I found to be the sucky part in all this generational healing stuff. You have to live it to heal it, which means you need to experience it in order to change it in the way it needs to be changed from within you, from within the family, and from within the entire family unit. And then there's the reveal to heal part, which means you have to talk about it, write about it, give it airtime, pull it out from under the rug and release it from your biology using your voice, using your words. And some of us come into family lines to change them. Some of us are born to break the patterns, to cancel the hidden covenants, contracts, and promises made in the past, and to dissolve the curses. And yes, curses do exist. Some of us are born into a lineage to reset the bloodline. And those who come into a family to clear the frequency of generational trauma are often thought of as outcasts or troublemakers. They're typically labeled as black sheep by the family because, well, they're looked upon as different. They might beat to a different drum, and while they are sensitive to how the family perceives them, they may be unaware as to why or what their bigger role in the whole dynamic really is. Has this been your experience in your family dynamic as well? Well, then you're not alone and you're in good company, because I'm pretty sure there's a lot more of us out there than we think. And it's time to talk about it, journal about it, write about it. It's time to support our human family as a whole by creating healthier family frequencies at home. It begins with us, and it's never too late to change a frequency because frequencies are timeless. So until next time, be well, choose love, and thank you for listening. Goodbye for now.